Welcome back to the Hackett's Quarry Summer Camp, where what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I'm your guide for the special Halloween Philosophy and Ethics in Game series, Josh Bearheart Hawk, and this week we're picking up right where we left off at the end of episode 1. Kaitlyn, Ryan, and Dylan are alone by the fire after Emma went off looking for Jacob and Nick went after Abby. It would seem summer love isn't all it's cracked up to be. Before our trio can continue the game of Truth or Dare, however, the sound of a gunshot and a scream breaks through the night air, and they magically teleport to the edge of the nearby forest where they find Abby begging for help. Something has happened to Nick, and it doesn't look good. After running away from camp in the last episode, Abby found herself roaming in the dark woods all alone, which is the ideal way to travel in a horror game or movie. Everyone knows, after all, that the one person to make it out of the slasher flick alive is the person who spends the most time alone in the dark forest or room. But she isn't alone. Something or someone is out in the forest with her, and we get a glimpse and a whisper from whatever it is as she starts to realize the predicament she's landed herself in. And things don't get any less weird when she discovers one of the trail cams Mr. Hackett had set up to spy on or monitor the campers or whatever else might be stalking the woods. On the one hand, we have to question why the man who runs the summer camp would want to have so many cameras. What with the setup that Dylan discovered in the last episode and now the camera that Abigail has found, but it's also kind of a smart move. Think about it for just a second. We've all heard of the missing 411 thing, where people go missing in national parks and forests, and many times are never found. Well, if more trail cameras were set up in the woods, we might just be surprised at how quickly we would find those missing people. Well, not the missing people who have been lost for a long time. They probably made a meal for Bigfoot at some point. We all know that Sasquatch prefers to eat campers as fresh as possible, so there's not really much chance that we find them. But for future campers that go missing, having a solid network of cameras covering every inch of the forest would be the perfect way to ensure that they can be quickly found. But getting back to Abby, Nick finally locates her, and the two sit down on a log to hash things out. She's heard that the man that she wasn't dating yet had made out with another woman right in front of her, and like a typical man, he has no idea why she's so upset. He just can't fathom how his actions could have possibly upset Abigail. And to be honest, I hate the whole miscommunication trope in so many movies and games, where people hide their true feelings or don't disclose things because it sets such a stupid precedent. People see these kind of characters on TV and in movies and games, and they think that not talking through things or sharing your true thoughts and feelings is somehow the normal, healthy way to deal with things, and it's just so wrong. I bring that up because, as Abigail, we have the chance to either beat around the bush with Nick or tell it to him like it is. And I go with the direct approach with the intent of stopping the BS. The miscommunication trope is not some goal to aspire to, people. It's a lesson we're supposed to learn to avoid those kind of problems in real life. Take that lesson and be honest with the people that you care about in your life, because you never know when they're going to be attacked by a werewolf in the... Oh, wait, shit. Did I say werewolf? I mean, you never know when they're going to be alone in the woods at night with some unknown thing stalking them. Anyway, so let's go check in with Emma and Jacob. So Jacob's feeling sorry for himself down by the dock, and Emma finds him unsuccessfully skipping rocks and pretending like he didn't care about what just happened. They share a brief moment, with Emma toying with Jacob's feelings a bit before giving in and telling him to get some towels so that they can share one last night in the swimming hole before saying goodbye. In reality, this is really messed up on Emma's part because she's giving Jacob false hope. Like, he knows deep down that they aren't going to be a couple once the summer ends, but the way that she's leading him on would be a sliver of hope for him and just bring more heartache later. As he walks off to retrieve the towels, we get a reminder of the part he stole from the van that is still on his person, and we find a tarot card. The creepy gypsy lady is going to be so pleased. Just wait till we see her. A little additional snooping reveals a forgotten newspaper that one of the more nerdy campers no doubt left behind, And we find a family photo of Chris Hackett alongside someone we can only assume is his brother. I'm sure this family lineage will never come up again. Making our way upstairs, we find a couple of other things to mention, with the first being a set of rules the counselors were supposed to follow for sailing. Most of these make sense, I suppose, though if boats capsize, remove kids immediately seems to be in conflict with do not jump in after them, sail over and retrieve them from water. If for no other reason, then I'm fairly confident that the capsizing would remove them from the boat without the need of the lifeguards or counselors. Unless that was supposed to mean remove the other kids from the water, that just seems like a waste of time. Why bother focusing on the kids who aren't in the process of drowning? Well, it's not like any of that really matters, though. Summer's over. We just need to ignore the old rules and focus on Jacob and Emma. It's not like there's a body to retrieve from the lake or anything. The notes are the least of our worries, however, as a conveniently placed pair of binoculars gives us something new to look at in the form of a shadow on the island across the way. It's probably just our imagination, and Emma is still waiting for those towels, so we should probably get back to her. Only there's no towels left, so there won't be any drying off tonight. The couple winds up having a little fun flirting before Jacob ruins it by trying to be a little bit too sentimental. Emma swims off, leaving Jacob floundering, before the sound of a scream and a gunshot breaks through the night. And that catches us up to the point where we left Dylan, Ryan, and Kaitlyn at. But there is a moment more here, as Jacob realizes that taking the tiny piece he stole off the van into the water was a bad idea. He has to decide whether to go check on whoever was screaming or dive back in to recover the part. And of course we're diving back in because have you seen horror movies? If we don't save that part, someone is definitely going to die trying to escape because the van won't start later. Thankfully, Jacob is part mermaid and can not only see extremely well in the moonlit water, but he can also hold his breath for an extremely long period of time. And now I'm understanding why Emma liked him so much. Forget I said that. There's a little bit of tension as Jacob has to free himself, not once but twice, from the razor wire below the surface of the water, and what the actual expletive? This is a lake where children play. Sure, they're in boats a lot of the time, but those boats obviously capsize, giving the explicit instructions about what to do if that very thing happens. Are you telling me that they just leave these dangerous chains and razor wire feet below the surface? And we can pretend that it isn't razor wire, but I've seen razor wire in person, and that is 100% razor wire. It turns out that Jacob is immune to razor wire though, and after freeing himself and rescuing the rotor arm, Jacob swims safely back up to the... Oh my god, what is that? Now there's also a body in the lake, tangled in the chains and razor wire. What kind of camp is Chris Hackett running? Why are there just bodies, bloated but definitely from the past few months, just floating in the lake that the kids played in on a regular basis? I'm starting to seriously question the safety of this camp. Someone needs to call the local authorities ASAP and shut this place down. Actually, hold on to that thought. Hopping back in with Ryan, Kaitlyn, and Abby, Ryan takes off into the woods in search of Abby's lost love, showing us some mad parkour skills in the process. When he finally reaches Nick, Ryan is a bit surprised to see what appears to be a pissed-off hillbilly dragging his friend off into the darkness. The first instinct here is to shoot, but that is way too obvious. The guy could just be trying to help, and for all we know, he is either unable to speak for some reason, or he's trying to be quiet to avoid something. He doesn't seem overly threatening either way, but if Ryan doesn't act, Nick will. Seemingly turning into a cannibal, Nick bites the man's finger off and takes off in Ryan's general direction before the pair are able to finally escape as the man takes a shot at Nick and then shoots the remaining part of his own finger off. Just a normal evening in the woods of Hackett's Quarry, all things considered. But even as the man disappears into the darkness and Ryan and Nick get away, we find ourselves back with Jacob, who wanders into the stranger as well thanks to a trap. The man cuts Jacob down and proceeds to cover him in what seems to be blood, the same stuff the man and his partner were covered in earlier. Jacob has the option to throw dirt at him instead, but as he seems to be more helpful than harmful at the moment, we'll go along with it. Once that little moment is over, the man gets up and heads off into the woods, seemingly tracking something using some kind of device, more or less confirming our suspicion that he's not out there to hurt the counselors. But something is out there to hurt them, and we swing back over to the fire pit to find Kaitlyn trying to get Abby to sketch the thing that attacked her and Nick, as Dylan and Ryan tend to Nick's wounds. Nick is trying to explain that some kind of animal attacked him, though as Ryan only saw a guy in the woods, he's leaning toward Nick just being a little bit delusional. It does seem odd, though, that the man would have attacked Nick so brutally, only to then turn around and try to drag him away. This thought might not occur to Ryan and Dylan, but perhaps it should. Nothing is making a lot of sense at the moment, and the last thing they need to do is to lose their minds and jump to conclusions. That's the kind of rash thinking that gets people killed. And it isn't long before we see the real risk, as a noise in the bushes near the fire pit grabs the attention of the group. There's no way to tell if the noise is coming from a friend, or a foe, or a harmless little bunny rabbit, especially as whatever is moving around isn't identifying itself and Ryan has a decision to make. He can either fire his gun blindly into the bush, or he can hold off. The tension is high, and no one wants to wind up like Nick, so the idea of shooting first and asking questions later makes sense. But we're trying to avoid the horror movie tropes and do things just a little bit smarter. And holding fire turns out to be the best move, as Jacob finally comes jumping out of the bushes. Why he didn't make himself known sooner is a mystery, though it's likely due to the fact that he wanted to drum up the suspense for the sake of the audience. He's actually a really thoughtful victim, and I don't understand why Emma wanted to let him get away. Did I say victim? I meant protagonist. He is a really thoughtful protagonist. After a brief exchange, Ryan tells Jacob that he and the others are going back to the lodge, as Jacob says he's going to look for Emma on the island, before Jacob tries to take the gun from Ryan in one of the stupidest moves that he could possibly make. Seriously, he grabs it and the two start a game of tug-of-war like it's some kind of harmless object. It's a loaded firearm, for heaven's sake. No one should ever act like that around a weapon, especially one that is ready to fire. These things are dangerous and should be treated as such, with safety being paramount. Especially when you're trapped out in the woods with a killer or killers on the loose. Thankfully, Ryan has the option to just let the gun go, and it hits Jacob in the face instead of shooting him, giving Kaitlyn an opening to save the day. As the group and Jacob go their separate ways, we catch up with Emma, who's living her best life and doing what any sane person in her situation would do, recording her thoughts for her subscribers. As she vents to the camera, she explores the island a bit, and we stumble on another amazing tarot card. Oh, and we catch a glimpse of the old man we saw hanging out with Cletus earlier. Well, we really don't know their names at the moment, but I think the big guy just looks like a Cletus. I can't just go on calling them the big guy and old guy forever, you know? But we're getting off track again. Emma is actually one of the more fun characters to hang out with in the game because she's insanely self-aware, and her sarcasm reminds me of, well, me. I could see myself being that sarcastic asshole if I wound up in the middle of a horror movie or game, so it's super easy to insert myself into the story here. She also has a fun view of islands that I could totally get on board with.
You know, when I was little, I used to think that islands just kind of would float in the middle of the water, kind of like an airbed.
After a little more exploring, she winds up heading into the treehouse that Jacob thought he saw a shadow in earlier, finding a little more than she bargained for in the process. For one thing, there's a bag that she doesn't recognize as belonging to anyone she knows, just kind of chilling out as if it popped into being there. As if that wasn't enough, a noise from above catches her off guard, and we now have to choose to either snoop in the bag or check out the noise. And of course, I'm going to snoop in the bag. You have to know by now, I can't resist checking out things that I'm not supposed to be looking at. It turns out, though, that we get to have our cake and eat it too in this scenario, as after stealing some clothes, bear spray, and a taser from the bag, Emma goes for the trapdoor in the ceiling. She jokingly predicts her own demise, and as the door opens above her, that prediction very nearly becomes reality. A monster comes crashing down into the treehouse, causing her to scream and back up. But thankfully, she doesn't drop her phone. I say thankfully because after tasing the beast, she takes its photo, which is smart because there is no way her subscribers are going to believe this. She is on the verge of having one of those completely real, viral videos that show a totally not faked monster encounter. If she plays her cards right, she could wind up on all of the hottest compilation channels, cashing in on the fame with a podcast and everything. Of course, I suppose it would be helpful if she escaped the monster first, though. There's a quick chase sequence where Emma has to avoid more than one obstacle on the path to freedom, and it all culminates with her shocking the beast one more time before climbing to relative safety in the attic of the treehouse. But she isn't completely safe just yet, as the monster manages to follow her up onto the roof of the structure as she's reeling in the zip line that connects the island to the mainland. She's not able to get it all the way up before the beast corners her, and it takes a Herculean effort to jump over and grab onto the handles that will whisk her to safety. Finally escaping, she winds up running into Jacob, who is way more happy to see her than she is to see him. After catching up, the two become slightly self-aware as Emma recounts the thing that attacked her.
I'm glad you're okay.
Yeah, barely. I mean, the thing that attacked me at the treehouse was like...
What? It was like what, Emma?
like out of a horror movie.
But they don't have long to reminisce, as another beast comes after them, and the pair are once again separated as Jacob accidentally pushes Emma off a walkway before running for his life and sealing his eventual fate. And by eventual fate, I mean that we're not going to concern ourselves with trying to save him, since he couldn't seem to make an effort to save the woman he supposedly loves. Though we don't really have much say in what happens to him, at least at the moment, as he steps into a bear trap and gets knocked out by Cletus's friend. And, you know, for a place with no real bear problem, this area seems to be overflowing with things that could be used to stop them. From the shotgun that Emma found in the storage room, to the bear spray that we found in the treehouse, and now the bear traps, it seems like bears are all over the place. Or I guess all of that could be intended to stop the monsters that seem to be crawling out of the woodwork now. That's also a possibility. Moving away from Jacob and Emma, we rejoin Abby and the others as they make their way back into the building that they were supposed to stay in the first place. As they come through the doors, we even discover another tarot card, meaning we're going to be able to make that old fortune teller lady really happy at some point. But pleasing Granny will have to wait, as Kaitlyn and Abby tend to Nick's wounds while Dylan and Ryan look for a way to call for help. As they make their way to Mr. Hackett's office to try the phone, Dylan hears a spooky voice calling his name, and we're reminded a bit of the ghost stories Ryan was so into. The voice isn't enough to really direct Dylan to anything in particular, and we soon find ourselves in the office as the pair try to figure out how calling emergency services works. Before they grab the phone, Dylan pulls Chekhov's gun off the wall, and Ryan struggles to find the right words to say.
Who should I call?
Mr. H?
The only number I got is to this phone.
Okay, then 911.
You mean 911? Who says 911?
I don't know.
Anyway, yeah, but like what should I ask for? Like police? Ambulance?
Cops. With guns. We need a lot of backup out here.
So they'll say, 911, what's your emergency? And then I say, help, my friends may have been attacked by a bear, or maybe not a bear, but definitely an animal with teeth. And we're not sure how many there are out there or how smart they are, so it's very possible they might be mounting an attack on us right now, and we really need backup.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Honestly, how Ryan manages to accomplish anything is beyond me. I get being a little nervous when calling for help, but he takes that nervousness to a whole new level. It doesn't really matter how nervous he is, though, as the call is disconnected as soon as it's answered. This would imply that the line was cut, but why at that moment? Was someone outside watching him and waiting for the call to go through to help increase the drama? It could have just been a coincidence, but this is one of the laziest tropes in all of media, and it drives me nuts. It's like when a character turns on the TV at just the right moment to see some important piece of information for the story. That kind of thing rarely happens in real life, if ever, and to see it happen time and time again makes me just want to give up on stories altogether. Can we please just find some other way that doesn't include something random happening at just the right moment? Like, maybe the 911 operator could be involved, or not believe them, which I know is another trope, but I don't think either of those things are as played out. Maybe the line could be down before he even picks up the phone. Like, what if someone cut the line earlier in the night to prevent calls in case the teens made their way back to the lodge? Anything but another played out trope. Speaking of played out tropes.
Okay.
It's probably the weather.
What weather, Ryan?
Maybe it was the bears.
Bear. And why does everyone blame everything on bears? Okay, so for the sake of argument, what if that bear that cut our phone line and just cut out all the power, what if that bear is waiting for us out in the hallway?
Thankfully, the phone isn't the only means of communication on the grounds, as Dylan suggests using some of the radio equipment that he uses to provide the camp with music in the summer to send out a signal. Taking that as their last chance to call for help, Ryan and Dylan leave the office and head back out into the main area to let the girls know where they're going. As they're doing that, Abby can be found trying to take care of Nick before Kaitlyn returns to let them know what's going on, and we find out that they might not be as alone in the lodge as they expected. Someone is walking around, and Kaitlyn goes to investigate, discovering Cletus in all his glory as he stalks the dark in search of the counselors. As she moves in to get a closer look, we can hear a voice on the radio talking to the man, and we learn that his name isn't Cletus, it's Bobby. And yeah, I can see that. He does kind of look like a Bobby. Though she tries to keep silent and stay hidden, Kaitlyn isn't much of a ninja, and it isn't long before she's running away, returning to Abby and Nick, minus her gun, because I was trying to do the right thing and not attack Bobby since, he doesn't seem to be too mean overall. But before she gets back, Abby and Nick have a little heart-to-heart, where Nick lashes out because Abby isn't returning his affection in the moment of terror. It would be easy to blame it on him just being not as nice as Abby thought he was, but it seems to be something else. As Bobby closes in on them, following Kaitlyn back to where they're hiding, Nick lashes out with an impossible amount of strength, slamming Bobby against a wall and nearly choking him out. As has been the case this whole time, I refuse to let Nick or anyone else hurt Bobby, so it doesn't go too far before the trio finally busts out of the building through a window, before Bobby can get back on his feet. As all of that is going on, Dylan and Ryan are making their way to the Radio Shack. No, not that Radio Shack, the one where the old radio equipment is stored. Well, that doesn't really clear anything up. The shack where Dylan used to do the morning announcements and play his sick jams for the camp to party along to. Anyway, as they walk, they get to know each other a little more, and we find out that Dylan is actually a huge nerd. He only became the camp DJ and wise guy because
Okay, so maybe I was a little nervous when I arrived in an uncomfortable social situation, and I overcompensated a little bit by making a bunch of jokes.
You played into it.
Yeah, I mean, people kind of enjoyed the blasé Dylan.
and I can totally understand that. As someone who spent their life dealing with Asperger's and the social issues that come along with that, I can relate to faking a persona that winds up becoming the exterior you that people come to expect. It can be hard to fit in sometimes, and there's nothing wrong with hiding behind a wall like that until you're comfortable enough to share your real you with the people around you. It's moments like this that make me forget about the horror aspect just a bit, and really get into these characters. I think this game gets flack from people for being a little lackluster in the writing department at times, and for the characters being what some might see as nothing more than caricatures. But there's some really good stuff in here if you take the time to look for it. Funnily enough, that's also true within the story. If you take the time to assess the situations, instead of just acting on instinct, you might just find that there's more going on than what appears to be happening at first glance in Hackett's Quarry. As we approach the radio building, we run into another tarot card, and old Mama Braithwaite is going to be so happy with all the cards we found this week. But the cards must wait, as Dylan and Ryan get things set up, and we see that Dylan is a little more confident when calling for help than Ryan was with the phone back in Mr. Hackett's office. Though he maybe should have practiced, or at least ran it by Ryan before hitting the button.
Hello, how's it going out there? This is, we need help. This is, we are counselors at Hackett's Quarry summer camp, and there's been a horrible accident, attack, some stuff bad here. We need your help. There is a swarm of bears, and they are everywhere, and there's these hunters too, and they seem to be shooting at the bears, but also at us, which is not good, and a few of our friends are hurt, and we are in desperate need of help, so please, there's vicious bears, and we don't know what to do, so please come help us. SOS, this is an emergency. Save our ship. Come on down, please help us.
I'm pretty sure I've heard more convincing calls for help in a Bethesda game at some point. If I heard that come over the radio, I would probably assume someone was pranking me, and I'd be on the lookout for a film crew, or maybe a YouTuber depending on the year.
Swarm of bears?
Yeah.
Herd of bears.
Yeah, I've heard of bears, but...
Oh my god.
Awkward dialogue aside, they wind up overhearing what amounts to a response in the form of some radio chatter that sounds suspiciously like it's talking about them directly. As in, the guys that have been stalking them in the woods. And let's be real, that was the most likely outcome. Dylan said the radio would reach up to a mile or so at most, and there was a decent chance the guys hunting them, and whatever else is in the woods, were using radios. They didn't exactly think this plan all the way through, but there isn't much to do now except deal with the monster that's decided to come looking for them. Oh, yeah, Ryan spotted something outside while Dylan was messing with the radio. I didn't mention it because he forgot to tell Dylan before Dylan opened the door of the shack to greet the thing. The beast climbs onto the roof of the building, and as if things couldn't get any worse, Kaitlyn, Abby, and Nick come strolling up like they're enjoying a nice Sunday afternoon walk. Ryan is able to warn them about the threat, and thankfully they're able to hide inside a cabin. The cabin that Abby and Emma broke into only hours before, showing us that breaking into buildings can be a good thing. In context, it's super important to focus on the context, because normally it isn't a good thing. But here, it just so happens to have saved them. Boy, that sentence is really going to bite me in the... Anyway, Dylan comes up with a plan to scare the monster off using a high-pitched sound from the speakers. But he isn't able to complete the setup for this concept before the thing apparently grabs his arm and pulls him up to the ceiling? It's not 100% clear what happens here, except that Dylan gets bit, somehow only suffering an injury on his hand. And now we have a huge decision to make. Some kind of infection appears to be spreading up his arm, and he starts yelling at Ryan to cut his hand off. I'm having flashbacks right now to the Walking Dead game at this point. remembering how cutting off Lee's arm didn't really help the situation much. But Dylan seems pretty sure, and we gotta make a decision one way or the other pretty quick. So far, we don't have a lot of experience with these kind of situations, and there isn't really a reason to think that cutting off his hand is somehow going to be a good thing. But I've also seen enough creature features to know that a bite is usually a death sentence one way or the other. So we go ahead and grant Dylan his wish. We can use a chainsaw or the shotgun, but the chainsaw just seems way more fun. Humane. The chainsaw just seems way more humane. The whole thing takes less than a minute, and afterward, Ryan manages to finish the job with the speakers, grabbing the wire that Dylan failed to get. And after the monster runs off and things calm down, Dylan thanks us for our quick action.
Why did you do that?
You told me to!
That was a bad idea.
Well, he isn't fully thankful, but when it turns out that the bite would have ruined his life forever, he's going to be so happy with the choice that we made. Ryan and Dylan are able to reunite with the group as the monster is now gone. But things don't exactly get a lot better as a new face emerges from the darkness, shooting at something near the pool and forcing us to end on a cliffhanger once again. Thankfully, it appears the stranger wasn't shooting at our group, though as they approach the pool we find out that someone was hit, though the identity of the victim will have to wait. You won't be able to find out who it was, however, unless you subscribe to Lost in Games here on YouTube and like this video. See, the fortune teller woman is watching you right now from the dark corner over there, and she demands likes to keep her from coming out into the open. I think that I held her off for now with the cards that we found in this episode, but you never know, and it's better to be safe than sorry. If you want to find out what happens next before anyone else, you can head over to Patreon or become a channel member here on YouTube. Channel members and patrons, for the most part, don't wind up being found dead by Jacob at the bottom of the lake. And they actually help me continue making content like this and other deep dives while getting their name on the screen, behind the scenes stuff, and more. That's all for this one. Remember to keep an eye on the moon and listen out for disembodied voices between now and next week. And I'll see you in the next one.